I agreed to a stupid bet at 2 a.m. The kind you say yes to just because you don't want to look like a coward in front of someone who already sees right through you. I should have known better. I should have walked away. But I didn't. And that's how everything with Joseph started. It wasn't even supposed to be a big deal. We were just hanging out in his apartment. Nothing special. A couple of beers, some random playlist playing in the background, and that lazy kind of silence that only happens when you're too comfortable around someone. Joseph had always been like that, calm, confident, the kind of guy who didn't need to talk much to take up space. Tall, broad shoulders, always leaning back like he owned whatever room he was in. And me? I talked more than I should have, especially when I was nervous, which around him was often. "All right?" he said, glancing over at me with that half-smirk he always had. "Truth or dare?" I snorted, shaking my head. "We're not 12. Scared?" he asked instantly. That did it. I straightened up a little, rolling my eyes. "Please." "Fine. Dare." His smirk deepened, slower this time, like he'd already planned this. That should have been my first warning. "Okay," Joseph said, setting his bottle down on the table. "Simple. You let me control your next 24 hours. I blinked. "What?" "From midnight," he added casually. "Anything I say, you do. No backing out." I laughed because it sounded ridiculous. "That's not a dare. I don't even know what that is." "It's a bet," he corrected, leaning forward slightly. "And if you win, I owe you anything you want. Same rules." There was a pause. The kind that stretches just long enough for your brain to start overthinking. "Define win," I said carefully. He held my gaze, dark eyes steady. "You last the full 24 hours. No complaining, no quitting." "And if I don't?" His lips twitched. "Then you lose," he said simply. "And you still have to finish it." Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Like he already knew how this was going to end. I should have said no. Instead, I scoffed. "That's easy." "Yeah?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "You're not that scary." That made him chuckle under his breath, low, almost amused. "Anthony," he said, shaking his head slightly. "You have no idea." That should have been my second warning. But by then it was too late. We shook on it. And I swear, the moment his hand wrapped around mine, something shifted. It was just a handshake. Nothing weird about it. But his grip was firm, warm, and it lingered half a second longer than it needed to. I noticed it. I wish I hadn't. "Midnight," he said, letting go. I nodded, trying to ignore the weird tension that had suddenly settled in my chest. The rest of the evening went on like normal. We watched some dumb show, argued about music, ordered food we didn't need. But there was something underneath it all now, something unspoken. Every time our eyes met, it felt different. Like the rules had already changed, even before the game started. By the time the clock hit 11:58, I was way more aware of him than I wanted to admit. He noticed. Of course he did. "You're already nervous," Joseph said, glancing at me from across the couch. "I'm not." I shot back too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "Okay, maybe a little, but only because you're acting like this is some big thing." "It is a big thing," he said quietly. The way he said it made my stomach twist. "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was trying to memorize something. "You'll see," he said finally. And right then, my phone buzzed. Midnight. Joseph leaned back slowly, a satisfied look crossing his face. "All right," he said. My pulse picked up instantly. "Game starts now." I swallowed, trying to keep it together. "Fine. What's first?" He didn't rush. That was the worst part. He took his time, picking up his drink, taking a slow sip, eyes never leaving mine. Then he set it down. "First rule," he said. "You don't question me." I frowned. That wasn't part of. He tilted his head slightly, and I stopped talking. God, I hated that he had that effect on me. "Fine," I muttered. His lips curved just a little. "Good," he said. Now stand up. I hesitated for half a second, then did it, because I'd already agreed, because I didn't want to lose, because I didn't realize yet that losing had nothing to do with the bet. Joseph stood up too, stepping closer. Not too close, just enough. Look at me, he said. I already was. That was the problem. But now it felt different. Intentional. Like I wasn't allowed to look away. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. What? I asked, trying to sound normal. He didn't answer right away. His eyes moved over my face, slow, thoughtful, like he was studying every reaction. Then, you trust me? He asked. The question caught me off guard. What kind of question is that? The only one that matters, he said. I hesitated. And that hesitation, that was the moment everything started slipping. Because the truth? I did. I trusted him more than I should have. Yeah, I said quietly. Something shifted in his expression. Not softer. Worse. More certain. Good, Joseph said. Then he leaned in just slightly, his voice dropping. Because you're going to regret saying yes. And for the first time since we made that stupid bet, I believed him. I should have backed out right then. There was still time. It had been, what, less than a minute since midnight? I could have laughed it off, called it stupid, grabbed my jacket and left. But I didn't, because Joseph was still standing there, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body, and looking at me like he already knew I wasn't going anywhere. Relax, he said, almost casually, like he hadn't just said something that made my chest tighten. You're overthinking. I'm not, I muttered, even though I absolutely was. He smirked. Second rule, he added, stepping past me toward the kitchen. You do exactly what I say. No hesitation. I turned to follow him. That was already implied. Say it, he said, opening the fridge. What? Say you'll follow the rules. I exhaled slowly. You're enjoying this way too much. Joseph glanced over his shoulder, that same calm confidence in his eyes. Anthony. There was something about the way he said my name. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. And my body reacted before my brain could catch up. Fine, I said. I'll follow the rules. Good. He grabbed 2 bottles of water and tossed one to me. I caught it automatically. Drink. I frowned. I'm not thirsty. Didn't ask, he said simply. Right. I rolled my eyes but opened it anyway, taking a few sips. He watched me the whole time. That was the thing that was starting to get to me. It wasn't just what he was saying, it was how focused he was. Like everything I did suddenly mattered. Like I mattered more than I should. Done? He asked. Yeah. Good. Now sit. I hesitated for a second, then dropped back onto the couch. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he stayed standing, looking down at me, and I hated how that made me feel smaller. Not in a bad way, just aware. Next, he said, crossing his arms. You answer every question I ask. Honestly, I frowned. That's not fair. Wasn't supposed to be fair. That wasn't part of the deal. Joseph tilted his head slightly. You agreed to not question me. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Right? Fine, I muttered. His lips twitched again, like he was trying not to smile. Good, he said. Let's start easy. I braced myself. Why were you nervous earlier? I let out a short laugh. That's your big question? Answer it. I shrugged, trying to play it off. Because you were being weird. Not honest. I looked up at him. It is honest. He stepped closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just one step. But it was enough. No, he said quietly. Try again. My throat felt dry all of a sudden. I stopped exhaling. I don't know. It just felt intense. Why? I hesitated. Because saying it out loud would make it real. Because I already knew the answer. Joseph waited. He didn't rush me. Didn't push. Just stood there watching. And somehow that made it worse. Because of you, I admitted finally. Something flickered in his eyes. Be specific. I swallowed. You just look at me differently, I said, my voice quieter now. Like you're trying to figure me out or something. Am I wrong? I shook my head slightly. No, that's not the point. Then what is? I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. The point is it makes me feel. I stopped. Joseph leaned in just slightly. Like what? God. Like I don't know what you're thinking, I said. And that bothers you? Yes. Why? Because I wanted to. Because I cared more than I should. Because every time he looked at me like that, it did something to me I didn't understand. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I shrugged. Because I don't like being out of control. There was a pause. Then Joseph nodded slowly. Good answer, he said. I blinked. That's it. For now. He finally sat down right next to me. Closer than necessary. My body tensed automatically. Relax, he said again, softer this time. Easy for him to say. Next question, he continued, turning slightly toward me. Have you ever thought about me? My heart skipped. What kind of question is that? An honest one. I let out a nervous laugh. We're literally hanging out right now. Of course I think about you. That's not what I meant. Of course it wasn't. I looked away. Big mistake. Look at me, he said. I did. Slowly. Yes, I admitted. The word felt heavier than it should have. Joseph didn't react right away. He just watched me, taking it in. What kind of thoughts? He asked. I shook my head immediately. No, that's too far. You agreed. I know, but... Anthony. That tone again. Firm. Certain. I exhaled shakily. Not just as a friend, I said finally. Silence. Thick. Heavy. And then, Joseph smiled. Not teasing. Not surprised. Just satisfied. Yeah, he said quietly. I figured. My chest tightened. Your turn, I said quickly, trying to regain some control. Have you? No, he cut in smoothly. You don't ask questions, right? Of course. I leaned back into the couch, running a hand over my face. This is so messed up. You can quit. I froze. I won't, I said. Then stop complaining. I dropped my hand, glaring at him slightly. He didn't even flinch. If anything, he looked more amused. Good, he said, because we're just getting started. And the way he said it, calm, certain, like he had everything planned already, made my stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with fear. I told myself I was still in control. That was the lie I kept repeating in my head as I sat there, way too aware of how close Joseph was, how his knee was almost touching mine, how his presence felt heavier now, like the air had changed. Stand up, he said suddenly. I blinked. Again. He didn't answer, just looked at me, right? I exhaled and pushed myself off the couch. This time he didn't move away. He stayed exactly where he was, which meant when I stood up, I was right in front of him. Too close. Closer, he said. My stomach tightened. You're kidding. Do I look like I'm kidding? No, not even a little. I hesitated, then took a small step forward. Joseph's eyes dropped briefly to my lips. That was new. That was very new. Closer, he repeated, quieter this time. My pulse spiked. This is already close. Anthony. God. I stepped closer again. Now there was barely any space between us. I could feel his breath, could see every tiny shift in his expression. Stop, he said. I froze. Good, he murmured. For a second, neither of us moved. And that silence, it wasn't empty. It was loaded. Next rule, he said. You don't break eye contact unless I tell you to. I let out a shaky breath. You're making this weird. I'm making it honest. That hit harder than it should have. I swallowed, forcing myself to hold his gaze. It was harder now, because up close there was no escaping it. No pretending I wasn't affected. Tell me what you're thinking, he said. That this is intense, I admitted. Not good enough. I shook my head slightly. I'm serious. So am I. His voice dropped just a little. Say it properly. My chest felt tight. I'm thinking that I shouldn't have agreed to this, I said. Why? because I was losing control, because I liked it, because he knew exactly what he was doing to me. Because I don't know where this is going, I said. Joseph nodded slowly. That's the point. Before I could respond, he stood up. Now we were face to face. Equal height, equal space. But it didn't feel equal at all. Don't move, he said. I couldn't. His hand lifted, and for a second, I thought he was going to touch me. But he didn't. He stopped just short, his fingers hovering near my jaw, close enough that I could feel the heat. Still nervous? He asked. Yes. Good. My breath hitched. Why is that good? Because it means you're paying attention. I frowned slightly. To what? To me. There was no hesitation in the way he said it. No doubt. And that did something to me. You're enjoying this way too much, I muttered. Maybe, he said. Or maybe I just like seeing you like this. Like what? Honest. I scoffed lightly. I was honest before. No, he said quietly. You were careful. That was true. I didn't like that it was true. Before I could respond, his hand moved again. This time it actually touched me. Like, just his fingers brushing along my jaw, tilting my head slightly. My breath caught instantly. Relax, he murmured. I wasn't tense. I was something else. See, he said softly. You react. I swallowed. That doesn't mean anything. It means everything. His thumb brushed just under my chin. Slow, deliberate, and my brain just stopped working. Joseph, I said, my voice lower now without meaning to be. Yeah, this feels like cheating. He tilted his head slightly. How? I exhaled sharply. You're doing things on purpose. Of course I am. At least admit it. I am admitting it. That threw me off. You're not even denying it? Why would I? He said calmly. You agreed to let me control this. God, he was right. I hated that he was right. Then answer me this, I said, trying to regain some ground. What's the point? Joseph didn't answer immediately. His hand dropped from my jaw, but he didn't step away. If anything, he leaned in slightly. The point, he said quietly, is to see how far you'll go before you stop pretending. My heartbeat was loud again. What am I pretending about? His eyes locked onto mine. You really want me to say it? A pause. A dangerous one. Yes, I said, and I meant it, because at this point I needed to know. Joseph studied my face for a second longer. Then, you like this, he said simply. My breath hitched. No, you do. I don't. Anthony. That tone again. Sharp enough to cut through everything. I stopped, because arguing felt pointless. Because deep down, I knew he was right. Maybe a little, I admitted. Joseph's expression didn't change much. But I saw it. That small shift. That quiet satisfaction. Yeah, he said softly. That's what I thought. And then, he stepped even closer. So close that if either of us moved just a little, we'd be touching. Next instruction, he said, his voice low. I swallowed. What? He held my gaze. Don't pull away. My chest tightened. From what? He didn't answer. And somehow, that was worse. Because I already had a feeling I knew. I didn't pull away. That's the part that stuck with me later. Not what he said, not even what he did, but the fact that I stayed. Because I could have moved. I could have taken half a step back. Laughed it off, broken whatever this was turning into. But I didn't. And Joseph noticed. Of course he did. His eyes didn't leave mine. Like he was waiting for that exact reaction. Or lack of one. Good, he said quietly. My chest felt tight. Joseph, I started. But I didn't even know what I was going to say. He didn't let me finish. Don't think, he said. Softer now. Just stay. That shouldn't have worked. It really shouldn't have. But something about the way he said it calm, certain made my brain go quiet for a second. And in that silence, all I could feel was how close he was. Too close. His hand came up again. Slow this time. Like he was giving me time to react. Time to stop him. I didn't His fingers brushed my jaw again, then settled there, firm but not rough, tilting my head just slightly. My breath hitched. "See," he murmured, still not pulling away. I swallowed. "I don't know what you want me to do." "I told you," he said. "Don't think." Easy for him, impossible for me, because my mind was racing now. Every possible outcome, every what if, every reason I should stop this. And none of them were strong enough to actually make me move. "You're quiet," he said. "Yeah," I muttered, "because this is a lot." He huffed out a quiet breath. Not quite a laugh. "I know." That caught me off guard. "You do." "Yeah," he said simply. "I'm not guessing, Anthony." There it was again. That certainty. Like he'd been thinking about this longer than I had. Like this wasn't spontaneous for him. "How long?" I asked before I could stop myself. His thumb paused slightly against my jaw. "How long what?" "How long you've been like this?" I said, gesturing vaguely between us. A small pause. Then, "A while," he admitted. That did something to me. Something heavier than everything else so far. "You're serious?" I asked. "Very." I stared at him, trying to process that, trying to figure out how I'd missed it. "You never said anything. You never gave me a reason to." That stung a little. "I didn't know I had to," I said. "You didn't," he replied. "But you also never let yourself go there." My chest tightened. "That's not fair. It's honest." God, I was starting to hate that word. Before I could respond, his hand shifted. Not away, just different. Less like he was testing. More like he already knew the answer. "You still can stop this," he said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "The bet," he clarified. "You can walk away." That wasn't what I expected. Not from him. "Why would you say that?" I asked. "Because this isn't about the bet anymore." My heart skipped. "Then what is it about?" He looked at me for a second. Really looked at me. "You," he said. That hit harder than anything else. Silence stretched between us again. But this time it felt different. Less like tension. More like something about to shift. "You're messing with me," I said quietly. "I'm not. This doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to." I shook my head slightly. "You're saying all this now, but you set this whole thing up like a game. Because it was the only way you'd stay. That shut me up. Because he was right. If he'd just said all of this earlier, I probably would have laughed it off. Avoided it. Pretended I didn't hear it. But now I was here. Too deep in it to pretend anything. "That's messed up," I muttered. "Maybe," he said. "But it worked." I let out a breath, half frustrated, half something else. "You're unbelievable." I know. There was no arrogance in it. Just fact. And that somehow made it worse. "Joseph." "Yeah. What happens if I don't stop?" His eyes flicked down for a split second. Then back up. "Then you stop pretending," he said. My pulse was loud again. And then, a pause. Not long, but enough to feel deliberate. "Then we see where this goes." I swallowed, because that sounded simple. Too simple. But nothing about this felt simple anymore. "And if I do stop?" I asked. His hand slowly dropped from my jaw. Not abrupt. Not forced. Just gone. "Then we go back to normal," he said. And something about that, about the idea of just going back, didn't sit right with me anymore. I didn't like it. Didn't want it. Which was new. "I don't think I want that," I admitted quietly. Joseph's expression shifted. Subtle, but real. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know." And for the first time since this whole thing started, it didn't feel like I was losing the bet. It felt like I'd already lost something else. Something I didn't even realize I was risking. I don't know what I expected after saying that. Maybe for him to push again. Maybe for things to escalate immediately. But Joseph didn't move. Not closer. Not away. He just looked at me, and this time, there was something different in his expression. Less control. More restraint. "You sure?" he asked quietly. That question hit harder than everything before. because up until now he hadn't asked. He'd just decided. Yeah, I said, even though my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. A slow breath left him, like he'd been holding it in. Okay, he said, and then he stepped back. Just one step, but it felt like a lot more than that. The space between us came back all at once, and suddenly I could breathe again. Except now, I didn't like it. That realization hit me instantly. Wait, I said before I could stop myself. Joseph paused, looked at me. What? He asked. I hesitated, because I didn't even fully understand what I was about to say. Don't go back to normal, I muttered. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Anthony, he said carefully. You just said. I know what I said. I cut in. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. This is confusing. Yeah, he said. It is. But I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. I added. Silence. Then, a small nod. Good, he said. That word again. But this time it didn't feel like control. Felt like agreement. So what now? I asked. Joseph leaned back against the edge of the table, crossing his arms. For the first time all night, he looked like he was thinking, not planning. Thinking. Now, he said slowly. We stop pretending this is just a game. I let out a quiet breath. About time. That earned a small smirk from him. Yeah, I said. Because honestly, you've been cheating this whole time. He huffed a short laugh. How? You knew exactly what you were doing. Still do. I shook my head. That's not helping your case. Not trying to, he said, and somehow that made me smile a little, which felt weirdly normal. Too normal for everything that just happened. So, he added, pushing off the table slightly, let's make this simple. I'm listening. No rules, he said. No bet. No control. I nodded slowly. Okay. Just honesty. There it was again. I groaned softly. You really love that word. Because you avoid it. Not anymore, I said before I could overthink it. That made him pause. Yeah? He asked. I held his gaze. Yeah. Something shifted again. Not tension this time. Something steadier. All right, Joseph said. Then let's start there. I crossed my arms slightly, mirroring his stance without realizing it. Fine. You go first. He smirked, still trying to make it a game. Shut up and answer. That actually made him laugh under his breath. Then, I like you, he said, just like that. No build-up. No hesitation. My heart did that stupid thing again. You're really direct, I muttered. You said honesty. Yeah. I know, I just didn't expect you to. Say it, he finished. I nodded. Well, he said, I've had time to think about it. That again. Time. While I'd been, what? Ignoring it? Avoiding it? How long? I asked quietly. He glanced down for a second, then back at me. Since before tonight. Helpful, I said dryly. He smirked faintly. Few months. That hit harder than I expected. Months? I repeated. Yeah. And you didn't think to say anything? I told you, he said. You wouldn't have stayed. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because yeah, he was probably right. Okay, I said slowly. That's fair. I hate that it's fair, but it is. Joseph watched me carefully. Your turn, right? I shifted my weight slightly. Yeah, about that. Don't overthink it. Easy for you to say. Anthony. I sighed. I like you too, I admitted. Saying it out loud felt different. More real. More irreversible. Joseph didn't react immediately. Just like before. He took it in. Then nodded once. Yeah, he said quietly. I know. I frowned. You're really ruining my moment here. He chuckled. You want me to act surprised? A little, yeah. Not happening. I shook my head, but I was smiling again. And this time, felt lighter, like something had finally settled. So what now? I asked again. Joseph pushed himself off the table completely this time. Walked closer, but slower than before, giving me time. A choice. This time, he said, stopping just in front of me. You decide. My pulse picked up again. Decide what? He held my gaze. How this goes. A pause. A real one. Because now, it wasn't about the bet, or rules, or control. It was just me, and him, and everything we just admitted. I swallowed. And if I make the wrong choice? I asked. Joseph's expression softened slightly. You won't. How do you know? Because you stopped pretending. That word again. But now, I didn't hate it. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the way he was standing there, not pushing, not pulling, just waiting. For me. And for the first time that night, I moved first. I didn't overthink it. If I had, I probably would have stopped. But I didn't. I just moved. One small step forward, closing the space between us again. Joseph didn't react right away, didn't reach for me, didn't say anything. He just watched, like he wanted to make sure this time it was actually me choosing it. Okay, he said quietly, and somehow that felt bigger than anything else he'd said all night. My heart was beating way too fast. Still think I won't regret this? I asked, trying to keep some kind of control in my voice. He tilted his head slightly. Do you want to regret it? That was a dangerous question, because the answer came too easily. No. Then you won't. I let out a breath, half nervous, half something else. You're really confident about this. I'm confident about you, he said. That did it. Whatever hesitation I had left, gone. Shut up, I muttered. But there was no real bite to it. He smirked slightly. Make me. I rolled my eyes, but I stepped even closer. Now we were exactly where we'd been before, except everything felt different. No rules, no bet, just us. Still nervous? He asked. Yeah, I admitted. Good. I huffed a quiet laugh. You keep saying that. Because it matters. How? It means you care. I didn't argue with that. Because again, he wasn't wrong. Anthony, he said, softer now. Yeah. Look at me. I am looking at you. Not like that. I frowned slightly. What does that even mean? Stop thinking, he said. Just be here. I exhaled slowly. And for once, I actually tried. Tried to stop analyzing everything. Tried to stop anticipating what would happen next. Just stayed. And when I did, everything felt quieter. Simpler. Joseph stepped closer. Not sudden. Not overwhelming. Just enough. You good? He asked. Yeah. Say it properly. I almost laughed. You're unbelievable. Anthony. I shook my head, but I held his gaze. I'm good, I said. He studied my face for a second longer, then nodded. Okay. And this time, when his hand came up, it didn't feel like a test. Felt certain. His fingers brushed along my jaw again, but softer now. Less control. More careful. My breath caught anyway. Still okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, quieter this time. His thumb shifted slightly, just under my chin, tilting my head up a little. And this time, I didn't freeze. I didn't overthink. I just let it happen. Good, he murmured. There was a pause. A real one. The kind where everything slows down. And I could feel it. That moment where something changes. Where there's no going back to how things were before. I swallowed. Joseph. Yeah. If this gets weird, I'm blaming you. That made him huff a quiet laugh. Fair. And if it doesn't? He looked at me. Really looked at me. Then I'm still taking the credit. I smiled a little. Of course you are. Another pause. Closer now. So close I could feel his breath again. But this time, it didn't make me tense. It made me lean in. Just slightly. And he noticed. Of course he did. His expression shifted. Subtle. But real. Anthony, he said quietly. Yeah. You're sure? That question again. But this time, felt different. Not doubt. Just checking. and I appreciated that more than I expected. Yeah, I said. No hesitation this time. Joseph nodded once. Then, he closed the distance. Slow, giving me time to stop him. I didn't, not even for a second. And when it finally happened, when everything we'd been dancing around all night actually became real, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It was quiet, like everything else just faded out for a second. And the only thing that mattered was that I chose it, that I stayed, that I didn't pull away. When he finally pulled back just slightly, not far, just enough to look at me, there was something different in his eyes. Not just confidence anymore, something softer. You good? He asked again. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Yeah, I said. Then, after a second, I smiled. Yeah, I'm definitely not winning that bet. Am I? Joseph smirked. No, he said. You lost that a while ago. I shook my head, but I was still smiling. Yeah, I admitted. I think I did. And honestly, for the first time that night, I didn't mind losing at all. I thought that would be the peak of it. That once that moment passed, everything would either get awkward or settle down. I was wrong, because the second Joseph stepped back, just enough to look at me, I realized something had changed. Not just between us, in me. And he saw it instantly. Yeah, he said quietly, like he was reading my thoughts. You feel it too. I let out a small breath, shaking my head. You're annoying, he smirked. And I'm right. I didn't answer, because again, there was no pretending anymore. No hiding behind jokes or distractions. Just this quiet awareness sitting between us. So, I said after a second, trying to ground myself, what now? Joseph didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back slightly against the table again. But this time, he didn't put distance between us. If anything, it felt like he was just giving me space to breathe. To be honest, he said, please, I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I blinked. Seriously? Yeah, that's kind of insulting. He huffed a quiet laugh. Not like that. I just thought you'd back out before it got real. I crossed my arms slightly. You underestimate me. No, he said. I just know you. That landed. Okay, fair, I admitted. There was a small pause. Then I looked at him again. So you planned all of this? Not all of it, he said. Just the start. The bet. Yeah. I shook my head, half amused, half annoyed. You're insane. Worked, though. Yeah, I muttered. I hate that it worked. He smiled slightly. You don't hate it. I didn't answer, because I didn't. Not even a little. Another quiet moment passed. But this time it wasn't heavy. Felt steady. Comfortable in a weird way. Come here, Joseph said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow. We're back to giving orders? Not an order, he said. Just come here. I hesitated for half a second, then stepped closer again. He didn't reach for me immediately, just looked at me. Still overthinking? He asked. A little. Why? I exhaled. Because this feels like it's going to matter. His expression softened slightly. It is, he said. That should have made me panic. Didn't. Okay, I said quietly. He nodded once. Then this time, when his hand found mine, it wasn't a test. It wasn't control. It was simple, natural, like it had always been there, just waiting. I glanced down at our hands for a second, then back up at him. You're really calm about this, I said. Someone has to be. I hate you. No, you don't. I almost smiled again. Yeah. He shifted slightly closer. Not pushing. Just there. You're still nervous, he pointed out. Stop saying that. Make me. I shook my head. You really don't let things go, do you? Not when they matter. There it was again. That word. Matter. And somehow it didn't scare me anymore. Joseph, I said. Yeah. This wasn't just about tonight for you, was it? A pause. Then, no. I nodded slowly. I figured. He watched me carefully. You okay with that? I thought about it. Actually thought this time. About everything that just happened. About how it felt. About how I didn't want it to just end here. Yeah, I said finally. And I meant it. Something in his shoulders relaxed slightly. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. You sure? He asked. Yeah, I said again. But I have one condition. His eyebrow lifted. Oh, no more games. A small smile. Deal. And no more weird psychological tricks. That one might be harder. Joseph. Okay. Okay. He laughed quietly. I'll behave. I doubt that. Fair. We stood there for a second. Just there. No pressure. No rush. And honestly, that might have been the craziest part. Because after everything that happened, this felt the most real. So, I said, tilting my head slightly, what does this make us? Joseph didn't answer immediately. He looked at me, then down at our hands, then back at me, and for the first time, he actually seemed unsure. I don't know yet, he admitted. I blinked. That was new. You don't know? Not exactly, he said. But I know I don't want this to be a one-time thing. My chest tightened slightly. In a good way. Okay, I said. Okay? He repeated. Yeah, I said. Okay. A small smile spread across his face. Not smug. Not teasing. Just real. And that might have been the moment I realized. Losing that bet wasn't the point. Not even close. Because whatever this was, it was just getting started. It didn't end that night. That's what surprised me the most. I think part of me expected things to get weird the next morning. For one of us to pull back, act like it didn't happen, or worse, turn it into some kind of joke. But when I woke up the next day, it was quiet. Not awkward. Not tense. Just quiet. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined everything. Until I walked into the kitchen and saw Joseph already there, leaning against the counter, coffee in hand, like nothing in the world had changed. Except, the second he looked at me, I knew it had. Morning, he said. Same calm tone, same steady voice. But his eyes? Different. Softer. Morning, I replied a little slower. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Just aware. You sleep okay? He asked. I let out a small breath. Yeah. You? Yeah. Another pause. And then, you're staring, he added. I blinked. I am not. He raised an eyebrow. Okay. Maybe a little, I admitted. Why? I shrugged slightly, leaning against the opposite counter. Just making sure last night actually happened. Faint smirk. It did. Yeah, I said quietly. I figured. Silence settled again. But this time, felt easier. Like we didn't have to fill it. Like just being there was enough. So, I said after a moment, this is the part where things get awkward, right? Joseph shook his head. Not if we don't make it awkward. Simple, I said. Very convincing. He huffed a quiet laugh. I mean it. I studied him for a second. You're really okay with this? Are you not? I hesitated. Then, no, I said honestly. I mean, I am. I just didn't expect it to feel this normal. Joseph nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Same. That made me smile a little. Good, I said. At least I'm not the only one. He set his coffee down, stepping a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. Still no regrets? He asked. I thought about it. About the bet. About everything that led up to it. About how I almost walked away. And didn't. No, I said. And I meant it. Not even a little. Joseph watched me for a second longer. Then nodded. Good. I rolled my eyes lightly. You really need a new word. Not happening. Of course. Another quiet moment. But then, Anthony, he said. Yeah. This doesn't have to be complicated. I tilted my head slightly. It already is. It doesn't have to be, he repeated. I studied him. What are you saying? I'm saying we take it one step at a time. That sounds suspiciously reasonable. He smirked faintly. I can be reasonable. I'll believe it when I see it. Fair. I exhaled slowly, then nodded. Okay, I said. One step at a time. Joseph's expression softened again. Yeah. And just like that, there was no big dramatic moment. No sudden shift. Just a quiet agreement. Something real. Something steady. I grabbed a cup, pouring myself some coffee, trying to act normal. Which was funny, considering nothing about this was normal. But somehow, felt right. So, I said, glancing over at him, about that bet. Joseph smirked instantly. What about it? I technically lost. Very clearly. Shut up. He chuckled. So what's the penalty? I asked. His eyes flicked to mine. Then down briefly. Then back up. And that look. Yeah, I knew that look now. You really want to know? He asked. I felt my pulse pick up again. Maybe, I said. He stepped just a little closer. Not rushing. Never rushing. That depends, he said quietly. On what? He held my gaze. On whether you still think losing was a bad thing. A pause. And then, I smiled. No, I said. Yeah, he murmured. That's what I thought. And just like that stupid, impulsive bet I agreed to at 2 a.m.? Yeah. I lost it. Completely. But somehow, turned into the best thing that could have happened to me.